Hello, and welcome back again, everyone. We are a quarter of the way through the day, and we'll be beginning this next session with two talks by people who are very much focused on dealing with and coping with poacher influence. So we'll start off the session, this second session, with Craig Spencer, who is the founder of Transfrontier Africa and the founder of the Black Mambas Anti-Poaching Unit and the Bush Babies Environmental Education Program. And he oversees both of those two programs. Craig is also a good friend of mine, and hopefully you'll be as inspired to get activated and engaged in conserving rhinos as we all feel after seeing Craig's talk. Craig.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Craig Spencer from Transfrontier Africa, the Black Mamba Anti-Poaching Unit, all the way in South Africa, Bululi, on the border of the Greater Kruger National Park. So I've surrounded myself in the Bululi Research Facility with all the paraphernalia that we normally associate with the protection of rhinos on an open landscape like this. There you can see behind me is the bull that was poached not so long ago. And you can see the machete marks. I'm not sure if the camera is focusing, but you can see the machete marks on its face where the horn was hacked off. And then, of course, all the other bits and pieces. I like to surround myself with the paraphernalia that we've used, the technologies and whatever that assist us in this. But our biggest intervention has been the Black Mambas that I'm proudly going to show off to you today. I'm going to speak as fast as I can because I know time is short. So starting my stopwatch now as well, if I can figure it out. On your marks, get set, go. And here goes the share screen, PowerPoint presentation. Thank you very much. Here it is. Okay, so whilst it's juicing up, that is just a introduction slide to show you where we are in the Bululi Nature Reserve. Transfrontier Africa is the NGO. So the Black Mambas and the Bush Babies are both sister projects of Transfrontier Africa, which is an NGO, and our partners, of course, South African National Parks Board, Bululi Nature Reserve, and the Department of Environmental Affairs. Where do we fit in on the landscape? So that little square with the buffalo head in it is our HQ. This is the western boundary that the Black Mambas are responsible for patrolling. Okay, we have a number of stations of Black Mambas dotted around the landscape. I think the furthest one is somewhere over here. This is the Kruger National Park, 3 million hectares in total, and it's multinational. So you've got Mozambique up there, and Zimbabwe there, Swaziland all the way down here. But ironically, it only comprises 3% of South Africa's landmass. So we need to guard this park jealously. It's the kind of Swiss bank account for our free-range big five animals, the iconic animals. Okay. Who are the Black Mambas? What is the Black Mamba? The Black Mambas are 36 young women from the rural African communities. Why women? Because they are sisters, mothers, aunties, future grandmothers in the community. So it's a multi-generational investment. If you invest in a young woman, you're getting the values that I think this industry has been lacking for a very long time. You know, so men are all about helicopters and guns and cool stuff. The women bring a different set of values into the arena. And it's a multi-generational investment. They, of course, are the teachers of the kids. You know, they're the primary caregivers in the communities. And they become little ambassadors, little beacons of hope and role models in their communities. So if we talk about the Black Mamba Anti-Poaching Unit, there's a lot in the media about them, but I thought I'd just show you exactly where it is that they fit in the illegal wildlife trade arena, particularly here when we're dealing with level 1 poachers. Okay, we don't really get to deal with the buyers and the couriers and the international markets and that kind of thing, you know, the end user. But it's based loosely on the British policing model. You can see if you put it on a X and Y axis, and if this is, I don't like that word ability, by the way, it should be a level of risk, perhaps. So at the bottom, the bobbies on the beat, they're the eyes and the ears. They're institutionalized. They've got institutional memory of the landscape. They know that vehicle driving over there is Mrs. Jones going to drop her kids off at school. They don't have to worry about it because they've been doing this for 9 years. But they say, hang on, there's a vehicle I haven't seen before. I think we should stop and check that one. Something out of the ordinary. We rely on their senses, their eyes and their ears. We rely on the fact that they look smart, that they speak well. You know, and then you've got the other two traditional levels at the top. That is your your pursuit, apprehension and prosecution model is up there. This is the detection model, is all lying around, the detection and prevention model. Okay, and then of course, we all know these are intelligence-driven operations, and the information comes to the top and flows down, not the other way around. We can't ask of these women to go into their communities and expose themselves by becoming informants to us. So there's a misconception. A lot of people think that's what we do, but that is not true. There we go, pretty picture, zooting on. Our coalition mission. Okay, we have a lot of institutions that partner with us, including Helping Rhinos and a few others, Rhino Mercy and so on. So it's a coalition mission, and that's to make the Greater Kruger National Park the most difficult, undesirable, risky, or unprofitable, however you want to approach it, area to poach. Okay, and to develop a proud, sympathetic community. I call it environmental patriotism. We want the community to be patriotic. You can see them marching through the streets there on International Rhino and Elephant Day. You know, infusing the community, getting them to understand the benefits of these things. So, but this is the reality. So it all looks like happy days, but there's a little black rhino that was poached on our landscape, and a little baby elephant. It wasn't baby, but it was a calf, elephant calf, that they prepared to kill these things just for the tusks that are possibly this big. You know, ivory fetches a big value, but rhinos as well. We knew if we lost the battle with the rhinos, if the social decay, the moral decay set in, the false economy set in the communities on our borders, the rhinos had a very short lifespan on our landscape. There were more rhinos than there were elephants. So we knew if we lost the rhinos, the elephants would be left. And we calculated at the rate of exploitation, elephants were dying at a rate of 96 per day when the rhino poaching crisis started. That's in sub-Saharan Africa. We had 224 days of elephants left in the Greater Kruger National Park, if that came across our border. And it was happening in Mozambique, which is right over there. I can see it. Hello, colleagues. So this is the thing that we have to understand. This is not a single species conservation intervention. This is building patriotism in the community, trying to get a long-term intervention to develop communities so that there isn't going to be a spillover to the next species, and then it's pangolins, and then it's lions, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, what have we got here? So this is a little bit of work that Dr. James Danoff-Berg and his colleagues did for us not so long ago. A quick synopsis of where the Mambas are sourced from. We solicit them from a community, train them and deploy them on this landscape. Those are our target communities. And you can see the values that they held. About 2 years ago, James, that this work was done, maybe 3 years now, because COVID kind of interrupted things. But it's very interesting to see the scores of how the people that were engaged, or the people that were close to the Mambas in their families, in their households, and what have you, valued the Kruger National Park, the big five, which are those iconic animal species that we talk about. And then, it goes down the graph where they don't value sport hunting or hunting for food as much as you would have thought. Snares. Everybody worries about poachers with guns. Snares, people, snares, snares, snares. We put out many, many snares every single day. A snare is an indiscriminate killing machine. There's nothing written on this that says, I only want an impala antelope, please, because I've got a hungry family. If you put this on the landscape, you could very well kill an elephant, a rhino, a cheetah, anything. This is a silent killer. It's a really, really dangerous thing to leave on the landscape. We must not forget about the snaring. Snaring is critical. The black mambas have been so successful in reducing our snaring and keeping it under control during COVID. It's tragic when you come across an elephant like this. A snare that was set for an antelope will kill an elephant. All right, that's just a quick little example of the snaring over time. If you want to see what happened during the COVID crisis, there was a bit of a spike, okay, but nothing that we couldn't deal with. We managed to bring it back down again once we figured out the temporal and the spatial displacement on the landscape. So yeah, number of rhinos poached per year, 2017 was the peak, and after that it just started dropping. Boom. We deployed the black mambas here in 2013, and then there was this sudden massive spike. It's interesting because it kind of coincides with when the ivory poaching globally also started tapering off. It's a little bit of a lag period with the rhinos, but the ivory, the elephant advocates have had decades of lobbying, decades of interventions to change policy and international legislation and so on and so on. And we didn't have that much time with the rhinos. It was literally 6 years of rhino poaching, and then we started seeing the benefits of it. And I think we actually owe it to the anti-elephant poaching lobby, or the ivory poaching lobby groups globally. We owe them a word of thanks, because I think we rode on their wave. Anyway, here's another example of the kind of stuff. The Mambas are forever finding animals in the bush that have been caught in snares. We are very firm that if there's an animal in distress that has been caused by a human intervention, we will get there and we will fix it and spend whatever money we need to fix it, because that is our responsibility. If we have failed to keep the poachers off the landscape, or to uplift the community that they don't have to set snares, that's a failure on our behalf. We need to show to the Mambas and the community that that animal's life is important to us too. It would change the entire ethos, I think, if we just went with the old traditional method and say, hey, it's going to cost a lot of money. Veterinarians are expensive things. Let's just shoot the animal in the head and carry on regardless, Sergeant. Say, no, we will spend the money here and we'll fix it. That message gets back. And I know it sounds crazy, but if we were living on a landscape where we just shot things that were in misery, I tell you, a different set of values would go back to that community. I believe that. I really do. Look at this picture at the bottom, little rhino. Okay, with a snare around its foot. We took the snare off, fixed it up, and we always deploy a tracking collar so that we can catch up with them again, and if necessary, treat them again. Wildlife rescues over time, this is all snare related. Rhinos, luckily, okay, none of these things died, which is nice. It's a constant thing. This is just pretty pictures. Check it out, check it out. But what I'll try to impress upon you here is that the Mambas detect these issues. If it wasn't for the Mambas doing the patrols every single day, removing the snares, blah, 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 and detecting when an animal is in distress, we would not be there to help it. That's the eyes and the ears. It's not just about detecting poachers, but it's also about remedying situations. Okay, have a look at this. Another finding from Dr. James Denhoff-Berg's paper. Okay, the positive reports of personal and or community level financial benefits from the big five. Big five are those iconic animals on the landscape. Those are our target communities. It's actually quite significant to see that Maseki was our most recent intake of Mambas. And they scored pretty high community financial benefit from the park. Okay, so that's interesting, because they've got a massive chunk of land inside the park as well. And you can see how the value systems actually can benefit from including local communities in the conservation model. And here we go again. What I like to see is that the personal value of the big five. People valued the big five personally to them at 60%. It's really, really cool. You know, so the pink is you know, not highly rated. And it's the same if you go down here. Personal support hunting for money. So they see quite a big thing there. And then personal support hunting for food. Okay, where one is no value. So the redder it is, there's no value. So they don't get any money out of hunting. And they don't want to have to hunt for their food. They would much rather go to a supermarket and buy it, I suppose, just like everybody else. So what do you do to prevent poaching in the illegal wildlife arena? Well, this is what we do. This is what the Black Mambas do day and night. They split into 5 teams, and they are patrolling on foot during the day and by vehicle at night time. It's a bit dangerous to run around at night. I think only food runs around at night on this landscape. Eyes and ears, we don't try and hide away in the bushes and catch a poacher. We flash spotlights, we have fancy stickers all over our cars, blah, blah, blah. You know, calling into the ops room, roadblocks, stopping, checking vehicles, who's coming and who's going, visual policing. We get into a bit of trouble every now and again when we say, we're going to dress in camo because we're paramilitary, but then we put a reflective vest on. People say, you must make up your mind. Are you trying to hide away with camouflage, or are you trying to brag with a reflective vest? It's like a weird thing. I said, no, 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 that's how we operate here. We're not hiding away from anyone. This landscape is saturated with ladies with boots, and they walk. Then boots were made for walking. They're in the schools all over the show. I'm not going to steal Wayne's thunder, because the Bush Babies program is a critical component. And this is something on that previous graph, if you remember, where the Masekis displayed a much higher value to things, although this was pretty static. This is where we've got our Bush Babies programs running in the schools. It's quite significant. So we believe that you cannot be running the Black Mambas on the wildlife landscape in isolation from running the Bush Babies back in the community in the schools. The two go hand in hand, and it kind of reduces that lag period if you're trying to achieve environmental patriotism and all those cool things. During the pandemic, it became critical for us to identify the families that were going to struggle the most and distribute relief aid to them. Not us, the Mambas. Go in, drop off food with seeds, grow vegetable gardens, etc., etc., to build resilience for those communities. Here's just some typical pictures of the daily routine of the Mambas on the snare patrolling. Shame. It's kind of difficult when the guys are hungry. Crime prevention, once again, it's a homemade weapon that was confiscated at one of the roadblocks. That weapon had, by the way, killed 6 rhinos before we had managed to take it off. They flung it out the car and tried to drive away, but luckily they didn't get very far. Okay, so the Mamba stations, look, the rural station, we have a headquarters, and then we've got what I call my forward operating stations or pickets, and this is the typical lifestyle that they lead. That's where we are. Canine unit is critical, not just because dogs are a fantastic tool in the law enforcement industry, but also because it teaches people how to bond with animals. If you haven't gone through ancestrally, you haven't gone through the domestication process and what have you, then that bond might be missing. Neural pathways might still be there, but they need to be stimulated. So when these dogs get the love and the attention, and there's reciprocation, and then there's bonds that form, that goes back to the community, and animals are no longer just a commodity that pull your cart and protect your chickens from hyenas and things. They also have feelings. Here we go. Firmer attitude to gateway crimes. We all know that. We can't ignore the snaring and just run around after poachers with guns. Why has this been effective? We believe we have disrupted the landscape. Poachers don't want to be detected in court, so they go somewhere else. We've also displaced the crime, not only spatially and temporally, but we've also displaced it off the landscape, so spatially completely into a different crime bracket. So poachers are now doing things like cash in transit heists, knocking off liquor stores, so on and so on, because the landscape's too hot. Why are we unarmed? We are unarmed for a number of reasons. Okay, they all are, but the main thing is that we don't have the safety nets that people have got overseas. If you use your weapon in the line of duty, there's a very good chance that you're going to go home traumatized, and you're going to carry that trauma across. We don't want people with PTSD tucking their children into bed at night. We would rather have them telling fantastic stories about the elephants playing at the waterholes and the sound of the lions, and this is so cool, you know, to work on the landscape. And then the other thing, of course, is that the poachers are watching, and the poachers will see them carrying weapons, and then the poachers will say, heck, I better defend myself because these ladies really mean business. If they catch me, they're going to shoot me. We don't want them to think that. We would rather say, all I have to do is hide away, and then the Mambas pick up their tracks, call in the armed response, and the armed response gets, remember there's 3 levels that I had? Okay, the smallest group is the armed response group. No, it's not the smallest group, I'm the smallest group. The armed response is like 3 guys, you know, and they'll back the Mambas up if they see something. They're the ones carrying the guns, not the Mambas. I hope you had a chance to read through the text because I'm whizzing now. Okay, so we've had a lot of success. It's really difficult to say how successful we've been because, you know, everything is multi-agency interventions. If there's an arrest made, I don't believe one party should be claiming victory for that. If the rhino poaching has dropped, it's probably something that happened internationally, etc. But we are still very proud of the statistics that we have to brag about. There they are. The poachers' camps are really significant. You know, you find those things you saw in that previous picture with the meaties hanging around like the hanging gardens of Babylon, flies and vultures and all sorts of things. The poachers have been sitting there literally going through everything that gets caught in a snare, whether it's a wild dog or a cheetah. They've all got a value, whether it's in traditional medicine or as bushmeat. All right, Liwayne, this is your baby, so therefore I'm not going to talk too much about it, except to say that it's really, really critical for us to have a firm footprint in the community. It's absolutely critical. And not just to look after people, but to teach people that animals also are much more than just a commodity. They can be companions too. You know, and we can help them catch snakes in their gardens, blah, 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 rather than kill them. So it's a whole different set of values that we are trying to bring into the community. Okay. And the other, you know, when I spoke about not arming the ladies, we don't want the message to get back that we're placing the life of a rhino or an animal over the life of a human being. So I'm not going to say to Uncle Bob in the wheelchair that we're definitely going to shoot at your son if he comes in to poach a rhino. Tomorrow, shame, I mustn't get into that now. But do you understand what I'm saying? I hope you do. Life is important. If people are shooting things to make ends meet, you know, we have to deal with it in a different way. We're not trying to militarize the landscape. That's not the answer. Okay, it's got to be a passive approach. And I believe it has shown dividends. We've got our role models in the community, they're beautiful women, they look fantastic in their uniforms, they take a lot of pride in what it is that they do. They've got kids, the kids are growing up, playing with their peers, taking the same message back. employment, upliftment. What does that give you? Dignity, human dignity and pride. Those are sassy girls, man. The Mambas, this is a quote from the Mambas. We don't want to live in a world without wild animals, but at the same time, we cherish life and we don't want to live in a village full of orphans and widows. So I'm telling you the traditional method of fighting fire with fire. When you put foot on this landscape, there's a jolly good chance that you're not coming back. You're either going to jail or you're taking the breadwinner out of the family. And you're leaving these young women vulnerable to have to look after a household on their own. If I arrest a man for poaching, or if he's neutralized, are we not creating a bigger problem? I do believe we are. They were recognized as the first ever all-female anti-poaching unit globally, 2015, I think it was, and they won this Champions of the Earth Award, which I thought was fantastic. I had no idea what was going on. I've got 1 minute left, eh? Breadwinners, dignity, all that stuff that we spoke about. Black mothers are black Mambas, best mothers, and be more. Those are the values that I want to bring into this arena. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you're going to stick around for a few questions, because I know I am. This was my first attempt at making this recording. If it's not very nice, then I'll give you an email address. You can complain to someone else. I just wanted to say thank you very much to James and Alex. James, in particular, you've made many trips out here to Africa. You've been a great supporter. The research was critical to us, hoping to duplicate that again. And by the way, I know I've missed a few emails and things. I will get back to you, I promise you. It's 40 degrees Celsius inside this room now. I think I'm going to turn the fan on. Thanks, guys, and speak to you soon. I just got to figure out.
Well, Craig, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to get to speak with and learn from you. It's been a great honor on our part to be able to support the great work that you do there. And I think now joining us with hopefully a room that's cooler than 40 degrees Celsius is Craig Spencer in South Africa. Are you here, Craig?
Yes, I am indeed. Thank you very much, James. I muted myself whilst my presentation was going because I don't like the sound of my own voice, believe it or not, contrary to popular belief.
All right, well, thank you nonetheless. So you bring up a lot of great points in the process, and the value of the Mambas as an anti-poaching unit that is unarmed and women dominant, if not exclusive at times, are novelties in the anti-poaching landscape. And you mentioned earlier in your talk about how women bring a different culture to the anti-poaching effort. I wonder if you could expand on that a bit. Like what aspects do they bring?
Oh, thanks, James. So, I've been in the conservation arena for 25 years, and, we had our kind of modus operandi, same old tools in the same old toolbox that we would throw at problems. Poaching is not a new problem. We're specifically focusing on rhinos at this conference, but, I've been in marine compliance and, whether it's an impala or an abalone, for example, poaching is a culture in certain communities. The causal factors, etc. There's other conservation issues that need to be addressed as well. And we have always thrown the same old tools at the same old problem. I've also been driving the same Land Rover for that amount of time, and I've got the same old rusty toolbox, and the Land Rover still has the same old problems. So we need to look at ourselves and say, what is lacking? Where are the gaps? We can fortify this landscape against poachers and so on, but every year we'll be building higher and higher fences, and it becomes a bit of an arms race on a force continuum. So we need to build resilience for the protected areas, and we lack a certain set of values, I think, inside ourselves. When I look at the people that I attract into the organization, or as the warden of this section, the kind of people that apply for jobs to fill the vacancies, they like helicopters and guns and blah, 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 and it's cool, and the uniforms are whatever. And we were looking for a different set of values and some place where we could make an investment that would reach multiple generations. And what better place to look than the young women who are going to be the mothers, than the future grandmothers. And they are the primary caregivers in those communities already. And we've seen the dividends that's paid off. Women bring a certain set of values. But James, we have to remember that if we employ women to bring their values into our arena, we have to allow them to perform. We can't clip their wings. It's no victory for us to employ women and train them and deploy them as men. Shaved heads, war paint, and machine guns. And it's just traditional practice here, or common practice here, to remove cell phones from your anti-poaching team because they might keep contact with poachers and, and get corrupted and all this kind of thing. But at the same time, these are mothers at home that they're looking after a household. They need to keep in contact. I'm taking them out of their homes for 21 days at a time on a rotational basis. So they need to keep touch. How do we bring the work that the mothers do, or the ranger for that matter, back to the home? It's easier to show it than to tell it. So we encourage, take photographs, go back home, enthuse the people. There's some fantastic anecdotal stories of the pride and the dignity that's developed. Nkateko, who you know quite well, goes home and we found out she's taking her staff rations that she gets, and she's using that to feed the kids that are on the streets in her village. She started with 5 or 6 kids. She now has 36 kids, and she's been doing that for years, and we had no idea, and she's taking them into her home and taking them into Manyaleti, is the park that's very close to where she stays. It's much closer than here, and she's taking them on game drives and, just enthusing them about the work that she does. And that's when I talk about bringing values. A Mamba is still a Mamba when she goes home. She's not going to a shebeen. She's building a home. She's building a safe place for kids, for the future generations and so on. Anyway, it's rum time now. Anybody else?
Very true. And I think that's really been borne out in a lot of conservation projects around the world too. The women bring a unique perspective and commitment to communities. The men in the communities, some do, but it's much more common among women. Is that common? It's not just in Nkateko. Are there other Mambas that are also changing their communities in the ways that she is?
Yes, absolutely. I think you picked up on that in the research that you did down here with them as well. Is they, in their spare time, when they're off duty, when they take their kid to school, they will stand up in front of the class and give a lesson. Not necessarily on why it's important to conserve rhinos and protect elephants and this sort of thing, but a life lesson, almost like a Boy Scout code that they've developed, an ethos that they carry across. And their kids are very proud of them, and they ride on that. And they say, okay, I'm gonna everybody sit down. Teacher, do you mind if I have 10 minutes? I just want to talk to these children. So I saw you playing after hours the other night. I saw you in the river with the crocodiles. Don't come crying to me when your limb gets chopped off, whatever. So they've become kind of, I'm being facetious now, but it's kind of an ethos that they take home with them, if that makes any sense. But James, I've got to emphasize the point that when we bring women into this arena, we must recognize what those values are. And sometimes we don't know that. And there's cultural differences as well. And a lot of people have integrated women into conservation. It's not unique. If you go to the Philippines or Thailand or whatever, there's a lot of women forest rangers and in every walk of life there. But we need to, in the African context, in the rhino range states in Africa, we need to recognize what those values are and invest in those values, rather than say, I'm going to employ a woman and just convert her into the old traditional ranger with a gun and a shaven head. And that's my emphasis that I want to make. And that starts at the recruitment process. The training facilities need to be designed specifically, the training courses, everything. It's a full package deal. It's not a simple task of just employing, soliciting and employing. People need jobs, they're going to sign up.
Right. And they'll bring their values along with them and infuse them into the communities.
Yeah.
Maybe a last question too, since we're almost out of time. You mentioned that many people poach to make ends meet. Do you think that the Mambas have played a role in convincing some of those people to find other lines of work or find other benefits to having animals around, so that those people don't feel that same need to poach? You talked about the increase of snare traps in 2020 at the start of COVID, and that was reversed this year. Have the Mambas in helping people find other alternatives and connecting them with food and resources like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you made a nice pun there in the beginning. They poach to make ends meet. Traditionally here in my neck of the woods, the general word for animal is meat. We say there's an impala, there's a kudu and what have you, but to the people living on the border, that's a meat. So if you translate the language directly, look at all the lovely meats running around. Right. So to answer your question, I think it's early days. The Mambas have been deployed for 9 years. The snaring was an epidemic, a pandemic on our landscape. It was at industrial level. That has now stopped. Where we've displaced that crime is actually into the tribal areas around the villages. So the patrol regime has now shifted to address that. But it's a tricky one, because you've got two kinds of meat poachers, just like you have anywhere else. You've got those guys that will go out like a fisherman to catch a fish to put food on the table, and you've got those guys that will go out to catch en masse. You saw some of the pictures in the presentation of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, you know, and and they're selling, and they're making a lot of money out of it, and what have you. Most of the NGO input into the communities that we work with are helping the people to survive. So bushmeat is always going to be a supply and demand chain that's going to exist. We should be helping people to prosper, to flourish, so that you can make a choice. If I offered the black mambas bushmeat now that was legitimately hunted elsewhere, we don't allow hunting on our landscape, but if it was legitimately hunted elsewhere, they would turn their nose up at it and say, no, I shop at a supermarket. I'm not eating that, you know. So no, I don't believe that we have managed to address those problems yet. And the poachers have just displaced their snaring off the landscape that we control. But it will still persist until we can get an affluent, an affluent community on our boundary that has the choice to buy from a legitimate source or to bushmeat poach. It's bloody hard work to poach. It's not easy.
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insight and wisdom and sense of humor with us all. It's always a pleasure to get to see you, sir. And I'll look forward to seeing you early in 2022.
Thank you very much, James. And thank you to everybody for the opportunity as well. It's always my favorite topic, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Thanks, James.
Thanks a lot.
I'm muting now.
All right. Take care.